A lot of stock car racing history has been made over the years at Martinsville. The Paperclip is the only track currently on the NASCAR Cup Series scheduled to host a race every year since that division's inception in 1949. Tonight, the top drivers of the Precision Racing League are buckled up and ready to go to make their own piece of history at the facility. Who will come up on top at the half mile of mayhem? We're about to find out on the Global SimRacing Channel. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Martinsville Speedway in Ridgeway, Virginia for Round 7 of the Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by Diecast Kings. I'm Justin Prince, alongside of the booth tonight is NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Challoner. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Martinsville is a tricky place to get around in terms of short track racing. Let's take a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around this track.
Welcome to a piece of racing history. The Martinsville Speedway in South Central Virginia opened before NASCAR was even founded, and it is one of the sport's original tracks. Its paperclip-shaped half-mile has grown from a dusty pioneer to a beautiful racing facility. Going off of the paperclip nickname, Martinsville is two 12-degree banked corners attached to two 800-foot-long straights. Getting out of these corners is all about managing the rear tires sliding around. It often feels like you're coming out of a valley as you head on to the straights. Martinsville is very much a rhythm-based racetrack, though, some even referring to it as a rocking chair. You get that sensation because you want to feel the front of the car slam down under braking and then lift back up under acceleration. Making things even more complicated is the fact that the track is only 55 feet wide. Down in the corners, you'll find that yellow curve. It's elevated off the track by several feet, and if you catch it with those left side tires, you're bound to grab a handful of steering wheel. All of the action isn't on the track, however. The pit road that starts in the entry to Turn 3 and exits out of Turn 2 is only 46 feet wide itself, making pit road under caution look like a circus. Martinsville is not a track that you can rest on your laurels at. Always on top of the wheel is the name of the game. The drivers that do that best find themselves with a grandfather clock trophy. The fans come from all over, the drivers come from all over, even internationally, to race at the hallowed grounds. So settle in, buckle up, it's bound to be a great race.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Martinsville Speedway. Now, as these drivers test the restart procedures for today, let's bring in my broadcast partner, Christian Challoner. And this is a difficult track to grasp at Martinsville, especially since they added the safer barriers to the straightaway, similar to Dover this week.
Yeah, very different challenge than what we had at Dover last week. But as you say, the addition of the safer barrier is causing some issues on the exit of both turns 2 and 4. A very difficult track anyway. Two things really come out as priorities here. And two things that most drivers seem to struggle with. It's either drive off the corner or it's getting the car rotated in the middle of the corner. And that's really where the race is won. Whoever can do the best compromise of both of those is generally the one who wins.
Absolutely. Now, before we get to the standings for today's round, let's talk about our series sponsors. First, Diecast Kings. Shop Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, that's diecastkings.com. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/diecastking. Also this season, ButtKicker is a proud sponsor of the PRL Cup Series. ButtKicker products include incredible immersion and bring realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. For more information, go to thebuttkicker.com to feel what you've been missing. Let's take a look at how the championship standings are shaping out for what should be an interesting one today at Martinsville. Regan Jr. still on top of the pylon in the standings with a 217-point total on the season. Bradley Hawley's in second, followed by Joshua Daniels, Adam Zepke, Charles Sumner round out the top 5. Remember, though, Hawley does already have a drop weight factored in. Richard Regan Jr. and the rest of the top 5 does not. This could potentially change in the closing stages of the campaign. For other drivers, though, they're also racing for the respective teams, where it is a back-and-forth affair between Wetterback Racing and Skidmark Motorsports. Just 8 points separate the two organizations. They're also the two fastest organizations in practice today at Martinsville. Rescue Racing, 24/7 Racing, Power Performance Group round out the top 5 for the 9 teams who have entered this season's competition. Now, as these drivers get ready for qualifying in the next couple moments, let's take a look at your race details, Christian. It should be an interesting one with 135 laps the distance.
Yeah, around 7 to 10 tonight, so coming towards the end part of the season, obviously a tight battle at the front of both championships. 135 laps or 60 minutes on fixed setups, and it might get close to a timed out race. It has been pretty action-packed this week, and that's where the incident limit will also come in. With 24 incidents, it's very, very easy to pick up a lot of incidents at Martinsville and still have a very capable race car.
Indeed. Before we continue our discussions, before the start of qualifying, I'd like to remind you that live timing and scoring is available for this event at GSRC.tv. Once again, you can find out where your favorite driver is and your favorite teams by going to GSRC.tv. Few moments before qualifying, and this is one of those tracks where track position going to be very vital. You mentioned the caution flags. The Truck Series had a fair bit of them at Martinsville this week. These drivers right now fairly similar to pace as well, Christian.
Yeah, and this is normally a very tight track, but the addition of that safer barrier has made it even tighter, especially on the exits. Nobody's really struggling with it on the entry. Everybody's always very low by that point anyway, but especially the exit of 2 and 4. It's been tightened up so much that running 2x2 through there is going to be really, really difficult. And on restarts, when the entire field is 2x2, it's going to put the top line at an even bigger disadvantage than it has been in the past.
There's the bright side, though, in terms of the addition of the safe barriers. It also brought the addition of the lights here for the iRacing users here at Martinsville, Christian.
Yeah, that's very true, and I think it is cool to be able to see a night race at Martinsville, and I actually feel like that might have added to some of the chaos that we've seen this week just through a lot of drivers coming out just because they wanted to do a night race at Martinsville and everybody being kind of hyped on that.
Day race, of course, for today in some time, 3:15 p.m. Drivers getting ready for qualifying. Joshua Daniels amongst the first drivers ready to hit the track for this session. Let's take a look at the conditions today. And these have been cooling down as practice has gone on. 10 degrees has been the drop from the top of the session to the end of practice to the start of qualifying now. 116 degrees Fahrenheit, Christian.
Yeah, it's just moved past 3:15 p.m. in the afternoon, so it's only going to get cooler as the night goes on, and I think that is going to help a little bit, especially as more rubber goes down too. The track's going to grip up quite a bit, though everybody's actually really, really close in terms of timing for practice time. So at a track where qualifying and track position is crucial, I think this is really going to make or break a lot of people's nights.
Jay Felton currently tentatively on the top of the board right now with a 19.897. Fastest times in practice were in the 19.7s. Looking now at Stephen Durbin trying to set his first time. Does with the 20.165. Joshua Daniels moves himself to the top of the board with a 19.870. And Felton now finishes his qualifying with a 19.896 as his official time. This is how quick things go here at qualifying. But you want to be good in qualifying at Martinsville because you do not want to be in the mix of the traffic because of how long it could take to set up passes here.
Yeah, definitely don't want to be in the mid pack. As you say, it's very, very difficult to move through, and obviously the field strings out more and more, and it's difficult to really find an advantage over people here as well. So if you start further back, it's going to take you pretty much the entire race to get forwards. And the other thing is pit stops as well. The guys that are at the very tail end of the line sometimes struggle to get all 4 tires changed before the pace car comes back around. I don't think we're going to see that here tonight. We've got about 22 cars, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but it's definitely a factor. It's just more stress that you don't want.
Indeed, looking at Richard Regan Jr., current points leader, now to the top of the board, and whoa, that is the quickest of any driver this session, practice or qualifying. 19.669, doesn't even put in a second lap. That's how quick he was.
Yeah, that's going to take a lot to beat. As you say, 669. We haven't seen anybody beat that in practice. It's going to be a tall order for anybody to beat it in the qualifying session.
Indeed. But to get back to the point on why you want to be at the front as well is, it's inevitable at this track that you make some type of contact with the chrome horn. It's very commonplace to at least have some scrapes on the right side of your car, whether it's the safer barrier now, or whether it's because you are making bumping and banging contact side by side, diving your way to the inside part of the track.
Yeah, and the one thing that you've really got to be careful of here is if you are in the mid pack, and it really doesn't matter whether you're in the top lane or the bottom lane on a restart, but if you get tagged going down into turn 1, the car normally will go around, and obviously then you have the entire field piling in, and you'll pick up a lot of damage from contact like that, and obviously lose all of your track position.
Herman's still trying to work his way for extra practice time, while Adam Zemke's trying to put in his first time. Hit the curb in 3 and 4. Coming across the stripe the first time by a 21.88. Check that 8.9. 16th on the board. Compare that to Charles Sumner, who is currently in 9th in qualifying, and many others are still yet to put in a time, including Bradley Hawley taking his first flyer.
And it is a difficult track to get qualifying right. The margins, as we see Charles Sumner go for a bit of a spin, the margins are very, very tight. It's very easy to overdrive the corner, and you give up easily a full 10th. You see there, Colton Lane pretty deep. I'm not sure if that was his cooldown lap, but it's definitely a challenging track to qualify at.
Second car now to the top of the board nearly. Bradley Hawley, second in qualifying, the 19.757. Pat Harvey, one of the quickest in practice before the track cooled down, in third. Hawley's the second, currently in fourth. Joshua Daniels currently in the top 5. So Hawley will start P2 tentatively unless Chad Brown comes off onto the track as the only driver in the entire session not to record a time in qualifying. Mark Kalin also had a strong practice time, and Kalin now with a top 5 qualifying run. We've talked about this a couple of times, Christian. That 62 has strongly improved this campaign.
Yeah, he's been doing a great job all season, and his qualifying seems to be a place where he's really come along as well. Obviously starting in the top 5 this week, and one of only 6 other drivers, well, 5 of the drivers in the 8s, so definitely a solid time.
We'll see how the rest of the times stack up. Qualifying has now come to an end. Let's see how they'll begin for tonight's 135 lapper from Martinsville. On the pole tonight, Richard Regan Jr. with a flyer of a 19.669. Bradley Hawley qualified in second. Third, Pat Harvey with Paul Williams II rounding up the top 4. Row 3, Mark Kalin and Joshua Daniels. Row 4, Jay Felton and Dan McLaren. Robert Bisson Jr. and Brendan Chatley rounded out the top 10 in qualifying, Christian.
And Adam Shane came in 11th with Colton Lane, the first driver to miss out on a 19-second lap time in 12th. Next row back, Charles Sumner, we saw him have a little bit of a spin in 13th. Jose Tellez actually quite a bit back there in 14th. Danny Cervantes in 15th. Robert Melican is 16th. And Scotty Johnson, a driver that we've talked a lot about this season, is starting back in 17th with James Duke 18th. Then Stephen Durbin in 19th with Adam Zemke in 20th.
2 other drivers put in qualifying times in row 11. That was Baron Hilton and Tristan Callahan in 20.5s and 20.8s respectively. Chad Brown, the only driver not to put in a time in qualifying, rounds out the 23 entrants who have brought their cup cars to Martinsville. Once again to recap, 12 degrees of banking in the corners, flat banking in the straightaways at Martinsville. 740 feet of elevation in total at the circuit, track width 55 feet, distance exactly 0.526 miles, with straightaways 800 feet long and tight 588-foot turns. It will be very important today for drivers to make sure, Christian, they don't make mistakes, and that careful and being careful could be a key.
Yeah, and being smooth around this racetrack is generally where a lot of the speed is found. As you say, it comes down to not making mistakes, and it's very easy to make mistakes if you're being aggressive, trying to either get in or out of the corners a bit harder than you would do before. And generally, you'll actually do better to just really roll a smooth line, be very consistent, and that'll help you a lot in terms of tires. As you say, getting off the corner is difficult, but also getting rotated through the corner is difficult as well. So it's a very, very fine balance, and whoever's really at one with the track the most is going to be the toughest guy to beat. And I really think that's going to be Regan Jr. Obviously last week he showed us that he can definitely save tires, and he had almost a full 10th advantage in qualifying.
He was fairly quick in practice as well. The first lap on the racetrack jumped immediately to third on the board, and that was when the track temp was still in the 120s. In your opinion, what are some of the error keys to victory for tonight's action?
Well, the hardest thing is obviously passing, and it's really going to be picking your battles with that. And the other thing is going to be lap traffic as well. This track's obviously very short. They will encounter lap traffic pretty quickly, and getting through that is both an opportunity to gain some time and maybe even gain a position if you trap somebody that you're battling behind a lap car.
Green flag coming this time by for Marty the flagman. Once again, Regan Jr. in control of the field in the Neonism machine. Then the North Star Title Company car for Bradley Hawley will start on the outside. Everyone all set to go to race at the paperclip tonight. Green flag waiting up at the stand. Marty the flagman puts it up in the sky. We're racing for Martinsville.
Already see in the mid-pack a lot of drivers trying to get to the bottom immediately. Nobody wants to be stuck outside on that top line.
Already the top three down towards the bottom side in 3 and 4. Massive send from a couple drivers. Jay Felton trying to take advantage of Williams the second. Kalen able to move his way up to 4th to end the first lap.
Already we see drivers struggling with that safer barrier, so Paul Williams the second there not have a great run off of 4.
Oh, contact! 77 and Joshua Daniels got hit. No caution. Got hit by a second car, which prevented him from going all the way around. Now the caution is out for the stack up in turn 3 with James Duke.
Yeah, it looked like that all started with Paul Williams getting half spun really on the exit of 2, but it actually got the thing straightened back up, and it was all okay until we got down to 3 where James Duke was sent around.
Yeah, everything got stacked up in that grouping. It all started, as you said, with Paul Williams II and the contact with the 77 of Joshua Daniels in turn 2. Bunched everybody up, as you'll see on the GSRC replay. Then calamity ensued by turn 3.
Daniels missing the rear panel already.
Here it is right here, and you'll see this coming up here in just a second.
Paul Williams on the top side, quite a bit ahead, and it's actually the 3 tips the 77 into a little bit of a spin. And then we see James Duke down there on the bottom, and there's a 3 wide, and I don't think the 24 was expecting Duke to send it underneath him, and the 77 was definitely still gathering everything back up.
So a lot of bumping and banging, but the first caution flag comes out just a couple laps in. Already Duke with significant damage on his car. Chatley hit the front nose when the 77 spun around. Baron Hilton with a crushed in left front suspension. Daniels, of course, with no back TV panel on their respective cars. This is why track position is so key here, and we talked about it multiple times already. You never know when stack-ups like that are going to happen.
Yeah, and as you saw there, it wasn't really the guys who were involved in the initial stack-up that were then involved in really the wreck that happened when we got down to 3. Obviously, Joshua Daniels was involved a little bit, but it's where track position really becomes key, especially the guys at the back. They don't have a lot of warning when they come up on a wreck right in front of them. You really don't see it until you get onto the straightaway, and we've seen in the past here, wrecks will completely block the straightaways.
Yeah, a couple times that's happened even in the NASCAR iRacing series, which is the half-distance series officially on the service. 1 to go signal this time by Regan Jr. still the leader. Holly, Kalen, Harvey, Felton rounds out the top 5. Regan Jr. off and away. Good launch. Green flags back up in the air.
He ran the 184 very, very high to do 3 and 4, and then really cut down. Huge advantage as he got down to turn 1.
Multiple cars sliding off the corner. Kalen got shuffled out of the groove. McLaren now to the inside for P number 4. You
see Jay Felton, another driver who was actually forcing drivers to the top side on the last restart. This time he's on the top himself, actually making some good progress here trying to pass Colton Lane.
Yeah, big checkup for McLaren off of turn 2. A lot of bobbling, though, off the corners with the higher track temperatures. This could cause a lot of late breaks. Lanes off and long, cautions out. Williams making the contact with the 60.
Yeah, it looked like maybe the 60 was trying to let the 5 in, and Williams wasn't expecting it. I'll have to check the replay.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Oh, that actually came from a long way back for the 7 there.
Yeah, that was at least a couple car lanes behind and bumps lane back to 23rd. See from the helicopter shot.
See, Felton actually got a really good run on that top side. Cleared lane completely. You see the 7's pretty far back and just gets into the back of lane and sends him around.
Tough break for Lane. Bumps him right down the running order. Already a second caution flag of the race. Josue Tellez and Stephen Durbin also elected to come down to the pit lane with Daniels and Lane in this sequence. Now, race control emphasized the importance of patience and caution today. As talked about, the truck race had several caution flags in their event. It's easier said than done, though, at Martinsville, with the track where it can take up to 5 laps minimum to set up a pass on one car in some cases on the mid-run.
Yeah, it's very difficult to pass around here. Obviously, the track is very, very tight, and it really comes down to trying to get a good run on a corner exit so that you can get underneath a guy going into the next turn. That's really the easiest way to make a pass here. But as you say, you've really got to work on someone for quite a number of laps, and sometimes 5, 10. I've seen drivers stuck behind others for as many as 25, 30 laps. So there is a lot of patience, and it can get ugly very, very quickly if there's contact.
And remember, too, it's not like it was with high downforce where the middle line ends up being the preferred line after 15, 20 laps, too. That bottom line is the quickest way around. You can still defend on the middle line in the corners, but if you're not along that red and white curbing, you're likely getting shuffled backwards.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, and as you say, we've seen some drivers make the middle work as a little bit of a defensive line, but it's very rare that we see drivers pass on the top side.
Absolutely, drivers all set to go for the green flag again. Regan Jr. once again shuffles on down, hits the gas, green flags back out. We're racing once more at Martinsville. Top 5 already single filed out on the run to turn 1.
Got a car going around. Charles Sumner got in the back of the 25.
Danny Cervantes spins around. Caution is out quickly. Well, that was a quick 3 yellow flags. 3 cautions in 13 laps.
It's all coming down to drivers just stacking up in the corners on these restarts, and that was definitely a case where I don't think Sumner was expecting the 25 to be slowing as much as he was. See the 25 trying to get to the bottom of the track, and Sumner's underneath him, just tags him. And then everybody behind having to really check up to get around him.
So a couple cars involved. Williams II got a bit of a tap from Cervantes, you've seen there, before the contact with Sumner. Once again behind the pace car. 121 laps to go. And mind you, too, it's difficult once you get going as well to even get to the brakes here. It was talked about by Anthony Alfredo in a broadcast I was a part of on Wednesday where, especially with the concrete surfaces, there's the chance for wheel hop and brake fade as the race goes on, especially if you're trying to send it a bit more deeper than some of the air cars may be.
Yeah, it's a surface change. As you're on the brakes, as you go over the seam, so to speak, on the entry to the concrete pad, you can either have a scenario where the rear wheels start to lock up and then you have to go chasing it up the track, or you can have a similar thing where you have to chase it up the track, where if you just bit on the brakes too late and you'll miss the apex. But obviously if you're racing a car that's on your outside at that point, you're almost always going to hit them.
And that's the difficult part, is making sure you stick that line and trying to make sure you don't have that happen. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, and that's difficult when you're trying to pull off a pass as well. Obviously, you're trying to be aggressive. You're trying to make it very clear that you're coming through, and that you're trying to get the absolute maximum out of the car, but you can very easily overdrive the car and actually make the pass harder than it needs to be. And it's a trap that we see drivers fall into all the time, but this is one track where it will really punish both the driver trying to make the pass and also the car being passed if the driver trying to pull off the pass is being very, very aggressive and actually does just overdrive even a little bit.
Indeed. To reset the top 5, Regan Jr., Hawley, Harvey, McLaren, Kalen is that grouping. Then you have Felton in 6th, Williams the 2nd and 7, Shane in 8th, Sumner, Bisson Jr. round out the top 10. Give credit, though, to the 3. Yes, he's made contact with a couple cars tonight, but was one of the quickest cars in all of practice in 5 lap average runs and 20 lap average runs in the 3.
Yeah, he's been doing a solid job, and I think if we can get some long runs in, he'll be one to actually watch here.
Let's watch as Regan Jr. hits the loud pedal. Back to the green flag we go. This time side by side, nearly for the 2nd spot. Hawley forced up to the middle line. Diving to the inside, the 67 of Harvey.
And Harvey's got a good run here, but Hawley might be clear on the entry to 3. He is.
Able to arc it on down. Dive in the corner in turn 4. Everyone able to dive their way to the bottom side. Single followed out amongst the entire top 10. And oh, by the way, new fastest lap of the race already by Regan Jr. with a 19.7. He has already pulled a 2nd on the rest of the field.
We thought he would definitely be the driver to watch out for based on his qualifying time, and showing it again here, pulling full 2nd already over such a short run.
Indeed, as many drivers now try to set things up. One of the interesting spots to keep an eye on, I think, for how this run can shape out is McLaren, because we talked about how to enter the corner. There's also differences in how comfortable drivers may be off of it, and that they may be letting the car roll a lot to make sure they don't slap that safer barrier in the apex.
Yeah, the safer barrier is definitely catching drivers out. You see it particularly off of turn 2. Guys are a little bit more hesitant to get to the throttle than they have been in the past. As we see, McLaren's actually going around. I don't know if there was contact, but definitely completely out of control in 3 and 4.
Wheel hop in that case, and now he spun around to the top groove. Caution flag is out on the track again for the 4th time. And we talked about that exactly just moments ago. Went about 10 feet deeper than his normal braking point and lost the back end.
Yeah, you see he had Kalen behind him here. Kalen's looking to his inside, doesn't actually go for the move, but doesn't need to. McLaren just misses the corner and then loops it around. Doesn't hit anything, but obviously all the track position is lost.
So moved McLaren all the way back to 21st position in that single car spin. Still 112 laps to go in this race, and pit stops are underway. Despite only a couple runs of a few laps, Hawley, Williams II, Shane, Sumner, Johnson, and Tellez all elected to come down, as well as a few others who have damage repairs to do.
A little bit of an interesting decision from guys at the front of the field to come down. Not had that many green flag runs, but it's a possibility that they're thinking that maybe they can go all the way to the end from this point if they pit.
Yeah, that's a good point in terms of the potential and the fuel mileage. We'll see if these drivers elect to take 2 or 4. Looking like just about everybody, yes, is indeed taking 4 tires in the fuel. Off and away, Hawley off the pit lane first. Kalen, Williams II round out the top 3 off the lane. However, this will put them all the way back in 10th position here. The other cars in front of them, though, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and Daniels, Durbin, and Chatley have all had to come in at least one time, remember, for their respective incidents.
Yeah, and this is a big risk for somebody like Bradley Hawley to go all the way back to the 10th spot. Obviously, we've seen it's been pretty wild in the midfield so far, and while this might be a very long play to make, and it could work, it's obviously high risk to put yourself in the midfield, especially when we've seen a lot of the incidents happen around about this point.
Indeed, and in fact, Chatley electing to come down in extra time, in fact, and sacrifice the 9th place position. That will allow Hawley and the rest of the drivers to be now 9th on up. But remember, there's already been a fair amount of tire cycles and heat cycles for the rest of the drivers who have not come down yet for the restarts. Do you think that would be a concern at all for any of those drivers off the jump?
I think it's going to have a little bit of an effect, especially the guys who are close to those on new tires. I would expect Holly and Kalen to be much faster than guys at the back end of the top 10, but I don't think it's a concern for drivers such as Richard Regan Jr., Pat Harvey, Jay Felton in the top 3, because by the time those other drivers actually start clearing up towards the top 5, the tires are definitely going to have equalized out at that point, and those drivers on new tires are going to be significantly further behind on the track physically.
1 to go signal. Regan Jr., Harvey, Felton, Bisson Jr., Brown, Callahan all stayed out and have not had any type of service so far. Daniels and Durbin have come down for respective incidents. Daniels, remember, involved in one of the first caution flags. Durbin came down with some of the other cars who were coming down for repairs a couple cautions ago. Regan Jr. off and away. Another massive jump by a country mile. Felton already battles for second.
Really caught Pat Harvey sleeping with that one. He wasn't able to get any pull on the top side. Easily cleared by Jay Felton.
Top 4 single filed out. First side by side. Daniels, Bisson Jr. and Holly really shuffling. Slide though for Brown. Loses traction off the corner. Caution is out again.
That's massively disappointing for Brown. He was up in the top 5 after starting in 23rd. He was doing a great job.
That's what I was talking about a little bit amongst ourselves before the start of tonight's broadcast. Turn 4 exit. Drivers have been prone here at Martinsville to snap loose just like that on throttle.
Yeah, and that's something that's always going to catch drivers out, especially on the exit of turn 4. Actually, we tend to see drivers get into the wall on the exit of 2, but on the exit of 4, there's always a lot of self spins to the bottom of the racetrack. You see here, you got a decent pull on the initial restart. He's actually running in the 4th spot at this point. Pat Harvey ahead of him there. Comes off a 2. Looks a little bit loose at that point, but a lot of clear track around him as he comes down to 3. Misses the entry just a little bit. Tries to cut the car down. Then you see it starts to get away from him as he gets towards the end of the concrete pad and just completely loops around, noses into the inside wall.
So Chad Brown, who started shotgun on the field with a crushed front end nose now on the 64. It's the rapid verification associates car. Now potentially may have motor damage much of the run. 103 laps to go still. Should note though, Daniels and Holly jumped through the field quickly on that start to 4th and 5th.
Yeah, they made much faster progress than I was expecting. I really thought it was going to take them at least 20 to 25 laps of green flag running to get back in the top 5. So Bradley Holly and Josh Daniels already in the top 5 at this point. That's really swung the advantage in their favor, but it all comes down to whether their tire offset can offset the massive pace advantage that Richard Regan Jr. has, really.
Yeah, I'm curious to see again how this all plays out here in this race. Mind you, drivers already approaching about a quarter way through that time limit you referred to as well in this one. Let's again talk a little bit about how that championship battle has been shaping out. Regan Jr., of course, as we talked about, does not have a drop week to his factor. Holly, the race director for the series, did not compete in the first race of the season. Felt he would be in a better role on the track itself to be able to direct the action from that perspective. And since then has scored 3 straight 40-plus race points days, Holly has on the season, which puts an interesting wrinkle for Regan Jr. A lot of pressure in the 46.
Yeah, we've seen the past couple of rounds. It's been a pretty tight fight between that pairing, and both of them taking home really high average points in the past couple of weeks, and that makes it difficult for both of them because, as you say, neither driver with the drop week available really. So any further mistakes at this point in the season is gonna put a huge dent in their points, and it's gonna be very difficult to come back from when the other driver is running so strongly and always picking up 40+ points.
Absolutely, and remember, Regan Jr.'s lowest points total in the season, 25, was round 1 when Holly did not compete. So that's the magic number that he may have to think about as the season progresses to Kansas. 100 laps to go this time by. Green flags out. Back on her way, and Jay Felton hit the safer barrier.
Yeah, with Regan Jr.'s high line that he's running and really arcing it down, it's making it very difficult for the top line drivers to actually get a good pull on the exit of 4. And as you saw there, Jay Felton in the safer barrier allowed Holly to sneak up to 3rd place already though.
Holly already on the charge on the back bumper of Pat Harvey. The question is going to be how we try and handle this again. Holly already hounding the back end, nearly loses his back end.
You see Pat Harvey is a driver who really specializes in the long run. I think it might be worthwhile for him to just kind of let Holly go if there's a slot behind him for him to fit into. You see Holly trying to go high here to get a big run on the exit, but I think he drove in a bit too deep. Not able to get as good a drive as he needs.
Yeah, that diamond line can work a little bit more in the lower downforce compared to how it did last year. Remember, for much of Martinsville last year, where there's that little dip on the exit of turn 2, cars used to snap on around to that part of the track when trying to diamond the corner.
Yeah, and that was really just because you had so much load from the downforce, and you could crank so much more wheel with this low downforce car. It's a lot less capable in that regard, and you have to be much more finer with your steering inputs.
Jay Felton, by the way, is still holding on to 4th position. Give a shout out, though, to Durbin, who's holding on to the top 5. Remember, spent much of the qualifying session putting in some extra practice in the U.S. Navy Seabees car. And now he's playing good defense on all the other cars on fresher tires behind him.
Yeah, he's doing a solid job right now to hold on to that top 5. He's got Joshua Daniels behind him. Daniels with a little bit of damage, but in Martinsville, the aerodynamics really don't matter as much, and as long as you've still got full power, you're definitely still in the fight.
Indeed, and that's why Daniel's still continuing on, even without that back-end TV panel. Remember, Kyle Busch didn't need to remember at one of the Bristol races a couple years ago.
Yeah, you definitely don't need that back panel for speed, but it can be a little bit disconcerting to the drivers behind you, obviously seeing a car that looks like it's got heavy damage running in front of you, and a little bit frustrating as well to see a car with damage be outrunning you.
Indeed, Daniel's actually going a little bit deeper on the brakes compared to his counterparts. Remember, Holly is still hounding the back end of Harvey. A bit of a step out, though, for Durbin, loses him 2 spots.
See Matt Kalin able to slip by on the top side as well.
And just lost the back end in that Toyota Camry. 2nd position, side by side. Holly is now swapped positions with Pat Harvey up the road.
Holly had a good run on the exit of 4, able to get under Harvey as they got down to turn 1, and Harvey looked like he made the decision to just let that pass happen, and now he's got Jay Felton about 2 car lengths back.
See if we can take a look at this on the GSRC replay. He was on the back bumper for a good 3 laps before he got the run off of turn 4. Showed the nose, was given the space by the 67.
Yeah, you see the 67 run really high there through middle of 1 and 2, not contesting the pass on the exit at all, and I think that's smart. Obviously, Holly's got much fresher tires.
Here's the lap traffic management, though. James Duke slaps the wall, letting by Holly. Goes outside the concrete to let by the top 4. And now that's closed up the gap a little bit for Jay Felton for the battle for 3rd position as a result.
James Duke's struggling a little bit tonight, involved in an early incident, and just doesn't look really at one with the track right now.
Yeah, that car has some bumps and bruises on the front end. No back TV panel either. Damage to the right side of the car. Having to back off a lot off the gas off the corners. Durbin, meanwhile, is struggling as well. He's now losing his grip in the 81. Seen him in the backdrop, snap all the way back to the end of the top 10.
He's had some difficulty getting off of turn 4 the past couple of laps, and when he's had that rear end break away from him, he's pulled down to the bottom of the track and actually let a lot of cars go by him on the top side. So losing a lot of track position, but obviously not comfortable with his car, and rather be still running than try and fight and have an incident.
Yeah, he's moved right out of the way on the bottom side whenever he's snapped like he has been on some of these corner exits. See, just with that bobble right there, he's still fighting that loose condition on the race car as this progresses as well.
This is where getting off the corner becomes quite difficult late in the run, and something I mentioned in pre-race, that's one of the big challenges of this racetrack, is balancing how well you can rotate through the middle of the corner versus how well you can get off the corner. And as we see Jose Tellez actually have a similar incident off of 4, lose a couple of spots.
And that was just behind the cars you're keeping an eye on right now in Callahan and Shane. This is the battle right now for 8th position on the track. This train now has to deal with James Duke for his 2nd time in this stint. Bisson Jr. currently leading the said grouping at the moment. Remember though, Bisson Jr. along with Callahan on the older tires, Shane on the newer tires here as the traffic moves up high.
Speaking of newer tires versus old tires, with Holly in 2nd, he's actually only just this lap started to close down Regan Jr. He's been about 1.8 to 1.9 seconds behind the whole time, and now just cut that gap to 1.6.
Indeed, 2/10 gain last time by for Holly. As we see him on the front straightaway this time by, near dead even in pace compared to Regan Jr. Still needs to close up 1.6, Christian.
Yeah, it doesn't really look like the older tires are hurting Richard Regan Jr. that much. Obviously, Holly is starting to close down. But I think the biggest thing that's going to factor into this fight is when they get to the tail end of the lead lap. Right now, everybody's just stacked together, and we see how James Duke's been forced to the top side a lot, and I think that's going to be a real factor. They're going to get to the tail end of the line, and there's going to be a lot of battles.
Caution. Caution's out. The 20th place car lost control. It's Baron Hilton in the 0-2 who triggers the caution flag, and they're a victim of snap loose off turn 4. Slam to the inside for the rescue racing machine, brings us back on the yellow for the 6th time.
Team 4 right now. And again, just loops to the inside of the track. Big contact with the wall there. And right there, the leader was only about half a second to a second behind.
Let's take a look at how Richard Regan Jr. seen this and take a listen as well.
So you could just about see Hilton on the entry of the corner there. And as he's coming off, he sees the car just spinning around on the bottom side of the racetrack.
Hand-in-mouth moment that time for Regan Jr. Here's another one. Top 2 stayed out this time. Holly and Kalen, despite having the longest green flag run of the race, elected to stay on the racetrack.
Actually a flip around of what we saw last time, where Regan Jr. stayed out and Holly came down pit road. But the big difference this time is that almost the entire field came down pit road, so now it's only Holly, Kalen, and Chatley out there on the old tires.
Yeah, this one is more of an interesting one. It's understandable potentially if you want to say let things play out at the front of the field if you feel it's going to get crazy for third on back, let's say. But this, we're talking about 35 lap old tires, including the pace laps, about 25 to 28 laps in green flag laps on the set of tires for Holly, Caitlin, and Chatley alone. That is a fair bit of pace difference compared to fresh sticker tires.
Yeah, this is going to be a much bigger difference than we saw on the last run, where, as you say, there was a lot of drivers out there who did stay out, but obviously so many pace laps has not really hurt their tires, whereas this was a substantially long run, and I think it won't be too long before we see Richard Regan Jr. back in the lead here, if he can clear Chatley and Kalen pretty quickly.
Coming to 76 laps to go when the green flag flies, 75 laps to go. Your thoughts, though, on how things have played out in this first third plus of this race today as they get ready for the one to go?
Definitely think track position has been key. We've obviously seen some drivers, when they've come down to take tires, they've been able to get their track position back. Drivers such as Bradley Holly, they didn't really waste a lot of time getting back to the front, but we've also seen other drivers who did come down, then be right around the eye of the storm, so to speak. And I think as we get to about halfway on time at this point, it's really gonna come down to staying out and keeping that track position more than it is having the tires.
Top 3 on 34 lap old tires. Everyone else on fresh tires. Green flags out, back on her way. Huge bobble for Chatley. Regan Jr. already up to third on the high side, and we're already back on our yellow. but that was quick. Tellez brings out the caution.
Very, very, very quick yellow there. Didn't even look like the front half of the field had actually got down to turn 1 before the yellow was out.
It wasn't Tellez's fault in that case. It was McLaren who snapped loose, trying to keep it off Williams the second.
And McLaren, a driver that we'd seen at the front of the field near the start of the race, have that spin, and now involved in an incident near the rear end of the field.
See this one more time, and you'll see has a good launch, but right here, almost looked like almost he tried to get off the gas, trying to make sure he didn't hit the 7.
Yeah, it looked like he was trying to get a bit of a run on the 7, maybe down into turn 1, and probably just cranked a bit too much wheel, and the car snapped away from him. And at that point, there's really nothing you can do, and obviously a restart with a car underneath him, there was only one thing that was going to happen. He was going to go straight down there and clean out whoever was underneath him.
Bad luck that time for Tellez. Chatley did elect to come down and pit this time by with the quick yellow and sacrifice the track position. From the 3rd position, everybody else stayed out throughout the sequence outside of McLaren.
I think that's going to really hurt Chatley though, because obviously the last yellow, a lot of the field came down, and this time none of the field is coming down except for him, so he's losing a lot of track position for really no gain at this point.
Well, maybe trying to think, you know what? I'm on 30 lap old tires. I don't want to be the caution myself, might be the thought.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. Obviously, he was up at the front end of the field with those old tires, and maybe on that restart he felt that on the initial pull he didn't really have the grip he was expecting, so just playing it safe to come down, it's just going to be difficult for him now being at the tail end. We've seen that's why the wrecks are happening, so he's going to have to pick his way through the field pretty carefully.
Not only that, he would have been starting on the top side too. Remember, Regan Jr. passed him at the stripe.
Yeah, that's true. We've seen obviously the top side, if you get stuck up there on old tires, is pretty much sending you all the way to the back of the line, so perhaps he just thought that that's what would happen to him, and he would end up at the tail end of the line one way or another, and at least this way he was the one making the decision, and he can have some good tires to do it.
So behind the safety car once more. Lights still on, 2 to go signal this time by. To recap, Bradley Holly in the lead on now 41 lap old tires, including pace laps. Kalen in the same window in second. Fresh tires, the rest of the field on back. Regan Jr., Harvey, Daniels inside the top 5. Jay Felton in 6th, Bisson Jr. 7th, Callahan, Shane, Durbin round out the top 10 positions. And for Kalen, he's been having a solid run today. He's been a fixture, as we talked about, in the top 6. He's been improving every single race this season. Was strong for much of the run at Dover last race. Now is very strong here at Martinsville. Trying to take a gamble here for track position.
Yeah, this is going to be a real test for him to see how he holds on. Obviously, with such a big tire disadvantage at this point, it's really going to come down to picking the battles, getting in line, and not losing as much track position as possible until the next yellow comes out, and he can hopefully bring a lot more drivers down with him when he comes and gets tires.
Two Waterback Racing machines in control of the field, then the Ballistic Union machine in 3rd, and then one of the skid mark machines in 4th. Green flags back out. Everyone up to the gears. Holly able to start in 2nd gear while Kalen tries to send on the outside. Merely misses the bottom. Here comes Regan Jr. for 2nd.
No surprises there that we saw Regan Jr. with the big run on the bottom side.
62 up the track. Kalen cycled back out. Now the 3rd position up for grabs. The Congo line now opens up on the bottom side of the racetrack. Everybody trying to get single file to find their way around that teal 62 car.
It's absolutely not what Kalen would have wanted, and already Regan Jr. having a look at Holly as they got down to turn 3. He's already at his bumper coming off of 4.
They continue to conquer the way right on by Kalen, but the race lead becomes one of the focus points. Holly trying to hold on for the time being. 10th of a second slower last time by compared to Richard Regan Jr. in the Neonism 46. Still, Kalen stuck on the top side. Esau Jr. making the move now for 6th, while Regan Jr. nearly snapped off the corner for 1st.
Regan Jr. really wants to get by Holly as fast as he can, and obviously has that inherent pace advantage and now a tire advantage. I don't think it's going to be long before we see Holly losing that lead.
There's the slide. Check up off the corner. Regan Jr. shows the nose again. 64 laps to go, this time by just past halfway.
And I really thought he was going to have a good run into one there, but not actually able to get the drive off that he needs. But down the backstretch now, this has got to be it. He looks to the inside.
Shows the nose. Holly gives him the space. Move Richard Regan Jr. up to the point. New race leader, 63 to go from Martinsville.
That's really shuffled the balance in Regan Jr.'s favor at this point. Obviously past the halfway, well, almost the halfway point of the race here, and he's now in the lead, back as he was, in control, and with the freshest tires in the race. So he's definitely going to be tough to beat from this point.
Absolutely, and for Holly, now it becomes, how do you play defense here on these older tires? Currently about a tenth or two slower a lap compared to Regan Jr. in the clean space. And Pat Harvey hounding the back end of the Wetterback Racing machine. So is Joshua Daniels and Jake Felton next in the train.
And the other driver that stayed out, Mark Kalen's fallen back to 8th place at this point, and now he's about to come under fire from Scotty Johnson and the 83 of Adam Shane too. So the drivers who stayed out, it's really working against them at this point.
See on board Harvey trying to be careful off the corner exits. This is similar to what he was doing on the fresh tires the last time he checked in with this machine. Still just can't get the run quite yet on Harvey, and we talked about this. Harvey, good on the long run at these types of racetracks.
We've seen in the past, obviously at Bristol was probably the most notable performance, where he was so extremely good on the long run. His pace at the end of the race was extremely fast compared with everybody around him, and this is another racetrack where you can have that similar kind of deal, but it just depends on if you got the ability to kind of ride in line and make that tire management strategy work. Right now he doesn't have Joshua Daniels really threatening him, but there is a line building up behind Holly at this point.
Yeah, Harvey really having to check up this past time around. Now a big checkup for Daniels to have to deal with. Harvey trying to build up a run. Smacks the safer barrier, in fact, trying to build up the speed.
That outside wall safer barrier is still catching people out even this deep into the race. Everybody's still struggling to adapt to it.
Yeah, we've talked about it a fair bit, Christian, and joked about it a little bit before, where when I personally raced at this track the first time with a safer barrier, smacked the wall good 4 times in the first 20 laps and got 20 seconds of damage before I realized, oh hey, there's a wall there. Harvey now trying to find his way past the immovable brick wall of the 184, pokes his way underneath the left side and nearly spins it. Caution is out behind them, Shane has spun around.
And is that Mark Kalen involved in that as well?
Yes.
It looked like his Cyan car, yep.
So that was the battle for 8th you were talking about, and I think the replay will show there might have been a lockup on the brakes, in fact, with the right front tire.
Yeah, you see Kalen actually get tight towards the exit of the corner, had to check up, and then Shane goes to the bottom. He's there, but Shane missed the bottom of the corner, tagged Kalen around.
There was just a very light touch of puffs of smoke coming out from the under part of the car for Shane. He was really trying to make sure he didn't have that happen there.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier with the difficulty of passing. If you just get it slightly wrong, the penalty is so severe that the corners are just so tight that there's no real space. Obviously, the track is physically wide, but realistically, if you're outside of that concrete pad, there's no grip anywhere else. So the track is really as wide as the concrete pad, which is only about 2.5 car widths.
Split pit strategy again here at Martinsville, and it's not as many takers down the pit lane. Holly, Chatley, Lane, Sumner, Cervantes, Shane, Kalen all came down to the pit lane. Regan Jr., Harvey, Daniels, Felton, Bisson Jr., Callahan, Johnson, Zemke, and Williams II all stayed out here.
We saw Bradley Holly was able to make good progress from the 10th spot the last time he went back here, but I think it's going to be more difficult for him this time, especially as we get closer to the end of the race. Drivers are going to be less willing to give up the spot.
Yeah, it's kind of the flip of what happened between him and Harvey and Regan Jr. in the last one, where Regan Jr. and Harvey had the fresher tires. He tried to stay on the older tires along with a couple others. This time, though, the numbers of those who stayed out with it getting closer to the checker flag, much more different to make it much more difficult for them to get to the field.
This is where Bradley Holly will really need a long green flag run to allow him to get as close as possible to Richard Regan Jr. And obviously, ideally, he'd want to see it go green all the way to the end from this point. But it's gonna be really difficult for him to fight through. There's a lot of good cars now inside the top 10.
Yeah, Jay Felden's been staying inside the top 5 and top 10 throughout the day. He's up into 4th now. Give a shout out though to Tristan Callahan. He's now the biggest mover in the race in the 11 car in P6. He's had some rough luck in a lot of the races in the Valvoline entry, but starting to turn the corner today despite the fact that the back bumper has been pushed upward towards the sky in the spoiler.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a rough qualifying. Obviously, in practice, he ran a 20.1, but then in qualifying ran a 20.8. So a little bit of a mistake there on those laps, and that set him pretty much at the very tail end of the field in 22nd spot. But he's worked his way up slowly throughout the night, and now looking at least the top 10, perhaps even a chance at a top 5 here if he can get around Robert Bissell.
One lap to go signal on the racetrack. For Callahan, 2 straight 30-plus points scored event days in this series. Prior to that, not scoring more than 29 points in an event. Richard Regan Jr. off and away at Martinsville, 49 laps to go for the paperclip.
Callahan with actually a great restart there, already in a 5th by the time he gets down to one. Big jerk at the front.
Contact, multiple cars bouncing around, caution is out. Harvey gets spun around after some bumper tag.
Like he had some contact with Joshua Daniels, but have to wait for the replay.
Absolutely, and I think Daniels might have got a touch bit of help from Felton's front bumper as well in this.
You see Pat Harvey there on the top. Felton just tags the right rear of Daniels, and just enough to send him up the racetrack into Pat Harvey. And again, you can see how tight the track is and how critical it is to not make mistakes. The tiniest of touches right there, unfortunately, sent around Pat Harvey and now to the tail end of the field.
Back to 16th position with the caution flag. 46 now laps to go this time by. Already approaching the numbers and then some from the Truck Series counterpart at the circuit on Wednesday. But we were just talking about how if Callahan may have a chance for top 5, might have gotten a little bit more realistic with that bumping and banging because was able to keep the car straight. Now he's in P3. Yeah,
and he made a great move on the initial pull and just completely drove around the outside of Robert Bissell Jr. as they got down to turn 1. It was a really nice move, and then obviously that incident ahead of him gained him another spot. So up in a 3rd spot, which is an impressive run from the back.
Especially for Martinsville standards.
He's done a great job of just keeping himself out of the incidents that have happened, and there obviously has been a lot of incidents here tonight, and his car looks very clean. As you say, some damage on the rear, but that won't be of his doing.
Indeed. As they line up behind this pace car here at this point now, how do you play this if you're the rest of the field? Because Richard Regan Jr. has been the king of Martinsville. For those tuning in, has led a majority of the laps tonight, has set the fastest lap of the race, set the fastest lap in qualifying, set the fastest average pace much of the race tonight. What do you do to try and find a way around that 46?
If I'm honest, I realistically don't think it's going to happen. I think he's got such an advantage over everybody tonight, and being the control car on the restarts, I don't see where anybody's going to get an advantage on him. I think the only thing that could take it away from him at this point is if we have a crazy scenario like we've seen in other races where he's been the leader, where we're coming down to say 5 to go and the yellow comes out, and pretty much whatever he does, the entire field will do the opposite. And that's how he's lost races in the past. I think Bradley Holly is probably the only driver who can challenge him with this tire offset, but he's still back in 8th spot, so he's got a long way to get up to him.
Yeah, this is a key moment of the season too, with there being a few races to go, because the short track stints, for the past few weeks have seen Regan Jr. score a fair amount of points. Next week, remember, is at Iowa.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting sort of hybrid track. It is a short track, but it's also kind of races a little bit like a big track.
We'll talk about that a little bit more as this race progresses. Green flag coming this time by 42 laps to go. Regan Jr. the control car. Jay Felton in second. Remember the last time he started on the outside of the front row, smacked the safer barrier? Not this time. Good launch for Regan Jr. and Callahan. Felton nearly smacks the wall again, though, in the same spot, and misses the corner in 1 and 2 and hits the safer barrier again.
Yeah, completely missed 1 and 2 and really bank shot it off the wall, but lost all his track position now at the back end of the top 10. We see Holly nearly lost the rear of his car there on the bottom, trying to get around the 42.
Motion starting to pile up a little bit. There is a pile up in turn 3. 4 cars stopped at the front of the racetrack. Kalen, Melican, caution finally out. Kalen spins the car back forward. Sumner was also involved. Harvey was also stopped. James Duke was the cause of the yellow, though, after sending it on the inside.
Well, we had a secondary incident as well as that. We had this incident in 3, so Kalen gets sent around, but actually then when we got down to turn 1, Bradley Holly spun out Scotty Johnson, and we had a huge stack up at that end of the racetrack too.
See if we can take a look at that one. So multiple triggers where cautions breed cautions, and if you don't get a caution, you're going to eventually get one within a lap or so, usually based on the trends. This is what happened on the other end of the speedway as everyone else was stopping.
Yeah, you see the 07 trying to get to the bottom of the track, just get tagged around by the 184, and then everybody behind managing to really get around. Some minor contact, but much better than it might have been.
So in total, 2 incidents in the span of a lap. At least 7 cars involved in the 2 cautions. Well, 1 caution turn split into 2 different types of flags. But now 38 laps to go, and there goes all the positioning for some of the cars, and for Harvey, despite that contact, is now 5th.
Yeah, we had a huge mix-up in the top 10 now. As you say, Holly in 5th spot. He'll definitely have a run to get 4th on the restart. But Robert Bissau Jr. is now up in the 3rd spot. Jay Felton's back in 7th. Colton Lane, after that earlier incident, up into 8th spot.
Indeed. Bissau Jr., though, is in 3rd position, and keep in mind that car did pick up a different look for this race. Today, Robert Bissau Jr.'s 3 car has a virtual half marathon as his spots are on the front hood today.
He's definitely got an interesting looking car, very bright green this week, and very easy to pick him out in the field too.
To be precise, is the virtual Plattsburgh half marathon car that Bissau Jr. is running today. Trying to bring awareness to that event as these drivers still work their way around here. Now, if you're anyone else inside the top 10, what's the play here? Because now it's starting to get where the patience, as you talked about, is getting thin at the end of this race.
I think it's coming down to restarts and getting yourself into that bottom line in a way that's as fast as possible, but also safely. We're seeing a lot of incidents happening where drivers are trying to force their way to the bottom, and obviously that creates a stack up, and if drivers aren't ready for that, then it's getting somebody, not necessarily the car cutting in, but always at least one car getting tagged and sometimes getting sent around. So I think the difficulty really here is Regan Jr. is forcing the top line so high up the racetrack. It's making it really hard for them to get a good run. And it'll be interesting now to see Tristan Callahan on the outside here. We haven't seen him starting from the front row yet.
See how this one goes. Now 35 laps to go for Martinsville. Green flag is out. Back underway. Paulie nearly ducked his way underneath the 3 machine coming to the stripe. Elects to stay on the bottom side as they rumble through 1 and 2.
Yeah, Holly got a good run on the exit though. He's already under the 3 coming down the backstretch.
Dive to the inside. The fresher tires of Holly back into a podium position. The gap between him and Regan Jr. though still 1.2 seconds.
And this is where Holly really needs this to go green to the end of the race. This is going to be his only play to try and steal that win from Regan Jr.
Especially since Regan Jr. is still running in the 19.8, and mind you, the track is getting to some of its coolest points of the race, 103 degrees Fahrenheit, the track temp. Battle for second is heating up meanwhile.
Yeah, I don't think Tristan Callahan's going to fight this too hard. We've obviously seen that Holly's got fresher tires, and there's a big gap for him to slot in behind and just ride in that third spot.
Trying to find any way he can around Callahan. Callahan clipped the curving in 3 and 4. Holly saying hello with his Ford Mustang. Still can't find his way back yet, but is forcing a bit of mistakes now for the Valvoline car.
Yeah, and Holly really can't afford to get stuck behind Callahan for much longer as he ducks down to the inside. Looks like he's going to clear him through 3 and 4 this time. Callahan in the top line, not able to fight him on the exit.
New car in second spot. Holly, now the question's going to be, can Holly have enough laps to reel in Regan Jr.? The gap, 1.1 seconds. He actually gained a 10th in the mix of that battle on this 46 machine. Now it's going to be the true test. What will Holly do when he tries to catch up to this car?
And a big difference in tires at this point, 26 laps difference. Although not all of them have been under green for Regan Jr.
You can see on board with Holly really pushing this car, bobbling its way off the corners, trying to use every single bit of those fresher tires. Gained a 10th last time by. Gap is about a second heading into turn 1 once more.
And I think he's got to be careful here. He's got to really slow roll up on Regan Jr. If he forces the pace, I think it's going to work against him. He's going to run out of rear tires pretty quickly.
Yeah, and right there, nearly bobbled the car again off those rear tires, trying to get him through the throttle. Lost him half a 10th off the corner. But he's slowly regaining ground at this point. He is one of the faster cars on the racetrack. Him and Colton Lane have been trading fastest lap times for the past 3 laps.
And we've got an incident down in turn 1, though. The 83's been spun around. No yellow yet somehow. I'm not sure how. There was a huge group of cars parked behind him.
There it is. Caution flag is out. Jay Felton also got spun around. A secondary incident.
Jay Felton had to tow there as well, so I think that's the end of his night.
Yeah, let's take a look first what happened to Shane. As he lost grip, as you mentioned, in 1 and 2. Question is, did he get any help?
So there, he was trying to pull a pass on Chatley, and looks like he's got the 67 Pat Harvey behind him. Trying to work on him. It looks like this might have been a lap earlier. But you see Harvey there, goes to the inside. Definitely trying to make a pass on Shane. Shane all the way to the top of the racetrack on the exit of 4, so he was out of the normal groove. Coming down into 1 and 2, trying to fit in front of the 25. Yep. Not quite able to get down, and then gets tagged into a spin.
The other one was involving Jay Felton that was mentioned. That ended up being the trigger for the caution just before they reached Shane. That was between Felton and Colton Lane, where Lane made contact in turn 3 with his front bumper in the back into the 5, and ended Felton's day.
See him running behind Felton here, and then Joshua Daniels ahead. Lane drove very deep into 1 and 2 already at this lap, and really was within half a car length, looking to the inside, sent it from pretty far back, and just tags the left rear of Felton into a spin.
And that contact there ends up being the trigger point for Felton to be now the 3rd DNF of the race. Chad Brown, James Duke also done for the day. Everybody else has kept on going outside of them and Barron Hilton in this race. But now that battle for the lead now gets to a tipping point because Holly doesn't have to close the second gap. He now gets to start on the outside line right next to drivers on older tires.
Yeah, but we've seen how aggressive Regan Jr. is being with his restart practice, really running the top line high, so it's going to be difficult for Holly to get a good run here. I think his best case scenario is to be able to get him, retain that second spot, and likely at that point be about half a second to 0.6 of a second behind Regan Jr.
Absolutely. Remember, Callahan in 3rd, Bisson Jr. in 4th, Daniels in 5th, Lane in 6th, Durbin, Williams the 2nd, Cervantes, and Harvey rounding up the top 10 positions when the green flag flies once more. If you've made a strategy call now at some point of the race, guess what? You now have to stick with it because, again, if you have to pit at any point, time limit is a factor with under 7 minutes on the clock estimated. Laps are an issue with 21 laps to go. In other words, you have to stay out, regardless of what happens now.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you're, say, in the last 5 cars on the lead lap, there is no reason to pit. You will just lose track position, as we actually see the 59 try to get out, stay on the lead lap, and now falling off the lead lap. Pit exit was closed.
He'll lose a lap, be the first car a lap down. Everyone else getting all set to go. 17 cars on the lead lap. Green flag is out. Back to racing at Martinsville.
Good restart by Holly there. Able to stay close to Regan Jr.
Holly able to close back up the gap, though, to a car length and a half off of turn 2. Coming in estimated 17 to go. Still 20 to go this time officially. Holly needs to close up that gap in quickly, and Regan Jr. is flying off this green flag. Craziness behind them, though. Diecast Jr. trying to make a poke underneath. Gets contact. Lane moves his way on forward.
Yeah, she straightened up Diecast Jr. there as he made contact with him. Keeps us green, but I don't think the 3 is going to be very happy with that at all.
Absolutely at that point. Side by side, Diecast Jr. and Durbin heading off into turn 1. Diecast Jr. trying to make that line work. No, that line has not worked all day long. However, Durbin's been getting loose off that bottom line all day whenever it's be side by side in those situations.
That's really the advantage that the 3 has over the 81. The 81, as you say, always getting loose on that bottom line, and all whilst this is happening, Holly's closed the gap to just over 0.2 of a second.
And mind you, the amount of cars have shrunk down on the racetrack as well. Williams the second, Sumner, Tellez, done for the race. Remember, 24 incident point limit at Martinsville. That's coming to play for some of the battles. Holly looks to try and use the bumper, heading in towards turn 3. Bubble coming off 2. Tries to fall his way behind the Neonism machines. Just can't get the run quite yet. Nearly gives him a shot.
And this is where a contact pass becomes a possibility, but it's very difficult to actually perform what sounds controversial is a clean contact pass, as in one that just moves the car a lane up the racetrack. Obviously, we've seen it's very easy to spin people out, and I think that's got to be on Holly's mind that if he does make contact with Regan Jr., he absolutely does not want to send him around.
Remember, they've made contact at Bristol before. We'll see how Holly plays this out. Under 4 minutes estimated on the clock to go. Look at how close Holly, though, is sending it each and every time they go apex off on that back bumper.
This is where Regan Jr. can't afford to make any mistakes of any kind. If he just misses the bottom even once, Holly's going to get underneath him, and it's going to be game over.
And remember, when it was the other way around, Regan Jr. did not use the bumper on the pass on Holly. We'll see if that respect is given from Holly here with the race win on the line. Diamond off the corner, just can't close it still.
And it actually looks like now Regan Jr., whilst Holly's trying to make these different moves around the track, he's actually giving up a little bit of raw time, and it's actually helping Regan Jr. out some.
Regan Jr. has become one of the fastest cars on the racetrack with all of this going on. And the 20.1s, everybody else in the 20.2s on back. Holly, good run, headed to turn 1. Just can't find his way, still inside.
He's definitely got the ability to get to his bumper if he wants to, but really trying to pull off a clean pass here.
Bit of trouble coming off turn 2. Danny Cervantes alone. A couple of cars wadded up. Everyone's able to get through quickly and cleanly. Battle for the lead continues. Holly, good run once again through the corner. Still getting loose off of turn 2.
That's why Regan Jr. has really got a bit of an advantage here. Just looks like he's getting off the corner just a little bit better, making it hard for Holly to get underneath him and get an easy pass, so to speak, by having control of the bottom line.
Here he gives him a shot that time. Regan Jr. parking the bus. Back into turn 3, still shuffling around. Approaching 2 minutes to go on the clock. Under 10 laps to go for Martinsville.
This is where you can see the advantage of the new tires is really in the middle of the corner, not so much the exit, but just the center roll that the 184 has, and that's where it becomes dangerous for Regan Jr. If he's having to park the center so much that Holly then does tap him, it's gonna push him up the racetrack. It's gonna be the easiest way to make that contact pass if Holly chooses to do it.
They're not going to make it to that total on the upper left corner of the screen. Right now, the estimated total coming to 4 laps to go. Everyone's eyes on the clock, while Holly tries to keep his eyes on the prize, trying to find any way he can for this race victory. Regan Jr. looking for a season-high third, coming to 4 estimated laps to go.
Regan Jr. has definitely been the car to beat today, and this is where the tire and the strategy advantage is played out for Holly, giving him a shot at this race.
Closing stages on the clock, 1 minute. Contact! Regan Jr. gets a shot from Holly. Still able to hold on off the corner. Fight continues to the closing stages. How will this shape out? Holly closes back up again on Regan Jr. again, and the caution is out.
Scotty Johnson was sent around on the exit of turn 4. That's what brings the yellow out. Big damage on the 07 there, completely missing the nose.
We'll see what happened here, and this could make it very interesting. What happens from here?
He's got the 42 behind him, and on entry, the 42 gets very, very close to him, tags him, and loops the 07 around. And that's really what the danger would have been at the front of the field had Holly tried a similar move on Richard Regan Jr. It's very, very easy to just tip a car into a spin.
And we're into territory we haven't gone into in a little while, to say the very least. Coming to 4 laps to go with trigger a green light checkered, but as you can see, the clock has run out, meaning white flag this time by. It appears Regan Jr. about to come away with the checker flag under caution, but it was a dominant performance today in the Neonism machine. Led a majority of the laps today at Martinsville. And for the 3rd time this season, he'll be a winner in the PRL Cup Series coming off the final corners. Chatley gets the wave. He'll get the wave from Marty the Flagman. Keep an eye in the upper corner. Checkered and yellow is out at Martinsville.
Really a dominating performance today by Richard Regan Jr. Obviously he had that huge advantage in qualifying that carried through to the race. He was clearly the driver to beat.
And Holly giving a sign of respect there after a hard-fought battle in strategy amongst these two cars. And I think Holly knew that he got a lot of slack from Regan Jr. when Holly was on the older tires. The 46 didn't use the bumper. Holly gave him the same respect when it was the other way around here for the final run. A big-time victory for Regan Jr., now the season leader in W's on the campaign. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the PRL Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings and ButtKicker, live from the virtual Martinsville Speedway in Ridgeville, Virginia. Welcome back to the Martinsville Speedway for post-race coverage of the Precision Racing League Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings and by ButtKicker. Today, Richard Regan Jr. kicked butt in the ButtKicker sponsored car. In a race which featured 4 lead changes and 12 caution flags, Regan Jr. led the most laps, 116 of 132 total completed, to win his 3rd race of the season. Bradley Hawley came home in 2nd with Colton Lane in 3rd. We'll be speaking with those 3 drivers during post-race coverage in just a few moments. Tristan Callahan, with his best run of the season, came home in 4th, with Joshua Daniels in 5th. Robert Bisson Jr. in 6th. Stephen Durbin, who started in 19th, came home in 7th. Pat Harvey in 8th after being involved in a couple incidents, including some of the stack-ups. Mark Kalin in 9th, and Adam Zemke rounded out your top 10 today.
11th, Robert Malikan moved up.
Richard Regan Jr. coming home with the season-high 3 victories now in the campaign. He'll now join us here in the broadcast booth after a dominant performance today. The fastest lap in qualifying, one of the fastest laps in practice, one of the fastest laps overall today. Richard, how are you feeling coming home with your 3rd victory of the season?
Feeling good. I put a lot of practice in for this track, Martinsville, tonight. Been practicing all week. This is one of my favorite tracks. It just sucks that usually it's breeds a lot of cautions at this track just because of how close everyone races and everything. So you don't get to do too many green flag laps, but when you do, I love it. So Bradley had newer tires there, so we just had to try to hold them off there at the end.
Yeah, let me ask you about the decisions for the split strategies. Whenever you pit, Holly stayed out. Whenever Holly pit, you stayed out. What was kind of your thoughts on that dynamic tonight, where in the end you had to defend with the older tires?
Yeah, so that I wasn't trying to do whatever he didn't do. So if he pit, that my goal wasn't to stay out. But I learned in practicing in some of the A fixed races and stuff past week that it's really hard to set up a run coming off the corner, on even if the guy behind you has newer tires than you. So as long as you are able to stop that run and check up a little bit in the center of the corner and make them hit their brakes or hit your bumper and make them check up coming on the throttle, you can usually hang on to it. And I didn't really want to pit unless we'd had a long green flag run. And then that 2nd or 3rd to last caution where we had that decent long run, there wasn't enough time to come take tires and potentially get caught back in the field. So just stayed out for the track position.
10-4 in that decision. Understandable, absolutely, with Martinsville. Next race, though, on the schedule goes to Iowa, and Christian described it as a bit of a hybrid in terms of it's a mix between a 1.5 miles and a short track. Your thoughts on Iowa as you try and close in and hold on to the current tentative points lead?
Yeah, I like Iowa. I'm not always the fastest there, but I have been fast there in the past. So we'll just have to put on a lot of practice. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to make Iowa, though. So we'll try to make it. And even if we don't, we'll put a lot of practice in just in case so we're ready.
Now, anyone you want to thank before we let you go as being part of this victory?
Yeah, I want to dedicate this race and this win to my mom and wish her a happy Mother's Day. And wish all the other mothers watching a happy Mother's Day. And then I got to thank my dad, my stepmom, and my aunt for always supporting me. You guys for broadcasting, everyone that watches. And then I got to thank everyone at PRL that puts on the league. And then personally, I got to thank my partners, Neonism. If you need a paint, go to facebook.com/neonism. Tell them that Richard sent you. We'll get you hooked up. We got ButtKicker, Bruzy Racewear USA, Multiple Sclerosis Society, Craftsman, Shell, Susan G. Coleman. Just thanks for watching. And shout out to everyone at Bobby Dale Earnhardt Legacy Esports, too.
Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on the victory.
Thank you.
That was Richard Regan Jr. coming home in 1st tonight. 2nd place with 15 laps led was Bradley Hawley. He's with Christian.
Bradley, I feel like we've spoke to you a few times now when you finished in the 2nd spot, and definitely at the end it looked like you had a chance at Richard Regan Jr., but looked like you also wanted to pull off a clean pass rather than have any contact to make that happen, and he looked like the guy to beat all night, but at the same time that was an interesting strategy play that you pulled, and it gave you a shot at it at the end. Can you talk your way through the race and how you came to that decision to be offset on strategy?
I felt like, if I can the way the race was going, I wanted to try to be off a different strategy than Richard, to try to see if I can, come up with, get the lead and pull away, or in some way, shape, or fashion. And the way it shaped up towards the end of that race, it worked perfect into my favor. It just, like you said, I don't like. I tried my hardest not to, use the chrome horn to move somebody out of the way for a win. If I want to pass them, I want to do it the clean way.
Yeah, it definitely looked that way. Obviously, had a couple opportunities where you were absolutely close enough to make a contact pass, trying to pull it off in a clean way. And I think that's a good way to race, and I think the respect will be repaid in the future if it's ever the other way around. And obviously, having to go back there with that strategy call looked like getting through the field was a little bit tricky. Can you talk us through kind of restarting in the middle? We saw a couple of drivers have some incidents with that.
Yeah, it just came down to trying to keep the rear tires underneath you. I knew that some of the guys ahead of me, when I got fresh tires, were going to have a pretty big disadvantage towards me. And it's just a matter of watching what everybody else does and try to not make contact with anybody and turn them around like I did with the 07. I don't think I could get on the brakes any harder without spinning myself.
Yeah, we saw a lot of incidents like that where, as you say, cars just kind of made contact in the mid part of the corner. And next we head over to Iowa, where it's a very different challenge, but kind of as Justin mentioned, a hybrid track between a short track and a big track. You got any thoughts on how that track's going to race?
We'll have to see. It's one of those definitely in betweens. There's different lines. It's just a matter of figuring out what the car likes and what the tires like.
It'll definitely be an interesting race. And before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to tonight?
I'd like to thank you guys for broadcasting us. Diecast Kings for sponsoring us, and the Waterback guys and the other organizers that are with me in PRL right now.
Well, thank you for coming and chatting with us, and congratulations on the second place finish.
Thank you very much.
That was Bradley Holly coming home in P number 2. P3 went to Colton Lang tonight. And Colton, it was an interesting final third of the race for you because you made a lot of bold moves in the 60 machine. Talk us through your perspective as you made your way up to the top 3.
Well, just had fresher tires by about probably 15, 20 green flag laps on the rest of that, probably top 10 by the time we had pitted. And, I just decided to start getting aggressive, and it's something I regret because I turned 2 people. Granted, one of them I helped save the car by hitting them again, but it's not generally a way I like to drive. But, I guess it worked out. I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting with some of the scenarios here with that, but talk us through why, in your opinion, it can be so tricky to try and make moves at Martinsville, especially with those differences in the tires, which by that final last half of the race were constantly a talking point amongst the drivers.
Well, I think the big thing the tires give you is entry and center. You don't really get much of an advantage coming off on new tires. You're about the same because if you light up the tires, it's still going to spin whether you got brand new tires or old tires. But that's why it's so tricky, is because you have to either try to outbrake or get a roll off the corner and try to get a good exit. But I guess the way that I tried to do it was on entry, and I did it a little too aggressively a couple times, getting into Felton's quarter panel, and then basically the same thing with B-Saw there.
Next race, though, was at Iowa. Your thoughts on that circuit?
I don't recall racing the Cup car at Iowa, but I'm sure it's going to be a good time. I like the track itself. Hopefully we can have a few less cautions. I caused one of them tonight, so, hopefully I don't cause one next week, and hopefully we can get a little bit more green flag racing in there. It's a bigger track.
Yeah, as talked about with some of the errors, a hybrid circuit, to say the least, a mix between a short track and a mile and a half. Now, anyone you want to thank before I let you go?
Yeah, just, the Waterback guys, specifically tonight we had Brad, me, Charles, and Mark Galen, We go out there, race on Wednesdays and Sundays, and just have a good time with it. You guys always broadcast. Well, maybe not on Sundays, but y'all broadcast us. Whenever you're not doing the other thing on Sundays and Wednesdays, and then the PRL in general, just being a great league. I mean, I've been there for almost 4 years, and if anybody's watching, you're interested in an iRacing league, come check us out. And we have signups up. It's a great league. I mean, I don't see myself going anywhere else my whole time during iRacing other than PRL for my league races.
Thank you very much for the time. Congrats on the P3.
Thanks, guys.
Colton Lane coming home in third. I'd like to thank him, Bradley Hawley, Richard Regan Jr. for stopping by during our post-race coverage. Real quickly, Christian, next race on the calendar goes to Iowa. We talked about it a little bit. Some of the interesting features that track, your thoughts of what we should see when we go to Iowa, the last of the short tracks on the calendar.
I think it'll be a pretty interesting race. Obviously, it's a pretty fast track, but it's still on the low downforce package, so a little bit of a hybrid, really. It's kind of like a faster Richmond, but you do have a tendency to run the top line in 3 and 4, and it's very, very bumpy in 1 and 2. So definitely a driver's track. It's a very fun track. I don't believe we'll actually be covering it on GSRC. I think our next race will actually be Charlotte.
Yes, indeed, with the major series and their Indy 500 on the weekend. But people can see you on the racetrack on Tuesday. Give us a tiny preview on what you to expect from you for Charlotte.
I think Charlotte will be a very standard 1.5 mile race. Obviously, it's a pretty bumpy 1.5 mile, but it's very, very fast. I think we'll see drivers wide open for a significant number of laps, and they'll probably be very, very similar to pack racing. And I think that we'll probably see a similar thing in the PRL as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, especially since the 9th race of the season goes to Charlotte as well. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Martinsville. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the PRL for organizing this strong series, as well as the sponsors a part of the campaign, and Diecast Kings and ButtKicker. Once again, I'd like to also thank the companies that provide the software and hardware for broadcasts listed up on your screen now, with additional thanks to Jude Malone, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today and Christian and Sean as well. If you'd like to find out about GSRC including upcoming races, you can find that at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storemvy.com or check out our social media on GSRC channel at Twitter, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our big red subscribe button on the YouTube page, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. As talked about, the next race you'll see in the PRL Cup Series will take place at Charlotte. That's the 9th race of the campaign. That's on Sunday, May the 24th. Start time 8:50 p.m. Eastern. That is 12:50 a.m. GMT, and about approximately 5:50 p.m. Pacific. We also have upcoming races for our series listed up on your screen, so check those out and mark them down your calendar. If you like Tristan Schellender and his commentating, you can see him on the racetrack as well on iRacing and on NASCAR's YouTube page this Tuesday for the longest race of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series season, the Charlotte 300, for 200 laps under the lights. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.